On this podcast, obviously, we talk about some of the tough times people have been through in their careers. When someone says that to you, like what's some of the challenges you've had, what's one of the first experiences you'd think of? Is it your e-card site?
Yes, I would definitely say that was a huge turning point. We'd spent thousands and thousands of dollars on this development agency or development, whatever you want to call it, overseas dev shop. And it didn't work, but it was also, so it was frustrating, but it was also a huge learning because I had, with a friend, drawn up, everything we wanted to do, had beautiful ideas, but never actually did any research on it. So it meant that not only did I spend a lot of money, but the next one I really didn't want to spend money. There was also a learning prior to that. I actually built a travel website in between living in Paris and going to London, and I had given all my money to an agency in Surrey Hills in Sydney.
Okay.
I remember so clearly going to the bank that day, and I asked, because I thought I would be sneaky and pay the website people in cash. And the lady goes to me, "Oh, what are you doing? Are you buying a car today?" And I said, "No, I'm actually, taking this to an agency. I'm going to build a website." She goes, "Well, your money's better in the bank."
Hello and welcome to the Be The Push podcast. My name is Jack Ferguson, and I'm going to be sharing with you stories of how business owners and entrepreneurs had to push through the hard times in their careers. We're going to be discussing the lessons learned from these experiences while arming you with actionable advice so you can be the push when you need it most. Show notes can be found at bethepush.com/podcast and clicking on the relevant episode link. Let's get started. Hello and thank you for tuning in. Today's guest is Holly CardewHolly, CEO and founder of Pixc. Holly has a really interesting story and has basically been a lifelong entrepreneur. It's always great to speak to the purebreds, but it will come as no surprise that she's had her fair share of challenges along the way, like most entrepreneurs have. We discuss how her first 2 tech businesses didn't work, so what she learned about market validation from these experiences and what she learned about working with development agencies. If you're thinking of engaging a development agency to build your product, this might be really interesting to you. You might have picked up in the first story as well that the cost can be really significant. So we go into detail about why that is and what happened to Holly. We also talk about working with distributed teams. So Pixc utilises a team of all remote workers, and we discuss the pros and cons of this setup during the episode. But don't call it outsourcing. Holly doesn't like the term, and you'll hear why soon. The last little teaser I'll give you is about Holly's time in San Francisco. So Holly still goes back there regularly. She's spent quite a lot of time there in the last few years. But for those who haven't been there and are interested in what it is like to live there and to attend there regularly, this is a great insight. That's just a taste of things to come. Here's Holly's story. Let's go. So today we're here with Holly CardewHolly of Pixc. Holly, how are you doing today?
Well, thank you.
And that is Pixc.com. Holly, can you just tell us, to start off with, what Pixc does?
Yeah, we're a content optimization platform. We edit e-commerce images for business owners. So we integrate directly into their store. We're able to pull all the content, so all of the photos, edit them within 24 hours and push them back. And the reason why we do this is because every image is editing a photo, whether that's for size or whether that's to remove the background. So we're automating this process for them.
Brilliant. I assume you guys are going to be pretty busy now that Amazon is coming to Australia as well.
Yeah, they have really strict requirements. So yes, definitely.
Okay, so most people who try and put products up on a site like Amazon, eBay, whatnot, do they get it wrong?
I mean, there's no right and wrong, essentially.
Okay.
It depends on how you want to sell your product, and for conversion rate, you want to do certain things. So you want to keep consistency of your images. You want to have, a consistent background Amazon definitely. On other platforms like Google Shopping and House, you have to have a white background. It has to be cropped to a certain size.
Okay.
So that, I guess, if they're not doing that, they're getting it wrong.
Right, gotcha. Really interesting. So the other reason I wanted to get you on the podcast today is I've seen a lot of people talk about you. I've seen you talk about online about having a distributed team, the benefits of that. So is it correct to say that Pixc's built on a remote working
We are.
team?
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. So you've almost become sort of a, I don't know if the right word's guru, but a lot of people look to you in this space for advice on how to run a remote team. Was that something that came about sort of accidentally, that you just started helping a few people with, and then more people got in touch with you, or how did that come about?
Yeah, so I was living in regional New South Wales.
Right.
And in a town of 10,000 people, and I wanted to build out, it wasn't just Pixc, there were other projects that I wanted to build out. And I don't have any technical background, so I went online to find people. Mm-hmm. And then I realized I started getting virtual assistants and marketing people and bookkeepers, and I became sort of addicted to it because you don't really need a huge budget. You can start with very small projects. You can scale up and scale down depending on what you need done. You can also say, okay, today I'm going to run a test and I'm going to send a newsletter. Oh, I don't know how to write a newsletter. Okay, I'm going to hire someone on a project basis to test this. And then when it works, you can scale it up and get more people to do it. So it became really exciting because I could essentially have someone like think of a task now and in 2 hours have someone on it.
Right. So when did you first hire someone then on one of these sites? Like, I'm assuming we're talking Upwork, Freelancer, those type of places.
Yeah, so I actually built a couple of other websites prior, and one of them was an e-card website, and I outsourced. At the time, I call it outsourcing. I gave the whole project to a web development team. Mm-hmm. I was 22 at the time, never had managed any sort of project before. So that's where I guess the hiring someone remotely started. But really for Pixc, it was when I had a landing page, it was nothing more than a landing page. And so inquiries would come in. So I hired someone to manage the inquiries. And then I also hired someone to send emails to businesses to ask if they wanted our service. So that was when I really started.
Okay.
They were our first two people doing tasks for me.
But was so the web development company though, but was that the first time you did this?
Yes.
Is that right? Wow.
Yeah.
That's a big project to start off with.
It was a massive project. Yeah. I didn't divide it down. I didn't do any customer research.
Right.
It was a lump sum of money.
Yeah. Up front.
At least 50% up front. Yeah. This certain web development company said that they could do what I needed them to do, and I needed them to build in HTML5, and this was when Flash was all the rage. Yeah. But I knew that Flash wouldn't work on mobile or iPad, and as an e-card company, you're going to get emails, it needs to be in HTML5, so they basically built everything but this core piece of the technology, and at the end they just said they couldn't do it. So that was like the biggest mistake.
Wow. Did you get your money back or?
No.
No. Okay.
No.
Damn it. Super interesting. Regional New South Wales.
Yeah.
Where was that?
So between Cowra and Orange.
Oh, right. I went to university in Wagga Wagga, so
there you go.
Not too far away. But I got a similar type of no, actually I don't have a similar experience in the sense that I didn't start off with a huge project the first time I hired someone online, but I was at uni at the time, and I found these platforms. I think I used Odesk or Fiverr, and I had this bright idea that I'd sell something on Odesk and then go get someone from Fiverr to make it. I think it was like a logo or something I started off with, but yeah, that because I do a lot of this as well, like with the remote teams and the distributed teams. So that's I'm totally sold there. But what I found at the time was that and I'm not sure if this is why you did it, but there was no talent nearby.
Yeah, I mean, definitely in Cowra. I mean, there's
so
it's pretty hard. There are obviously people, but also people weren't really online sharing their how were you meant to find out who was there?
Yeah.
It's not like a city where everyone markets it. LinkedIn wasn't a thing then.
Right. Yeah.
So
yeah, and so I suppose in a way we didn't have much choice. I remember with that project too that I ended up I think I sold a logo for $50 and tried to get it done on Fiverr for $5 or $10, and by the end of it I remember losing money because I that didn't work out too well because I had to keep on going back to the person on Fiverr to get them to change it because the client wasn't happy with the project. So yeah, it sounds like a kind of interesting idea or a good idea, but that didn't work out too well for me. So my first experience with this as well, I lost money on. So really interesting there. But why don't we go back a little bit to sort of what was growing up like for you? Like, where'd you grow up? What were you like as a younger person?
I grew up
teenager?
in Sydney, and I guess I always wanted to make money. But it wasn't necessarily to be rich. It was just I felt like I was doing something productive. So, the first time when I turned 14 and 9 months, I went out and got my first job at McDonald's.
Yep.
Learned a lot there. Actually, going back a little bit before that, I remember clearly in the school holidays, our family friends had a sponge business. They sold sponges to Woolworths, except they didn't have any robotics or automation for the packing. So they got all the kids. And I would have been 12 at the time, but they were paying $5 an hour.
Wow.
So I would go over with these family friends' kids and we would pack sponges.
Right.
That was probably my first learning lesson because I saw the sponges. There was yellow ones and there were blue ones. And I asked one of the sons of the guys who was there, who was a bit older than me, and I said, oh, what's the difference? Because one was going into the kitchen package and one was going into the bathroom package. He goes, nothing. It's just the packaging. And I thought, oh, they're lying to us. Different price points, different sponges, but really they don't do anything differently.
Yeah.
They're the same sponge, just different colors.
Right.
And then growing up, I always had a job, always. So McDonald's, Pretzel World, Baker's Delight, after school. And that's because although I was given pocket money, I always liked to not have to rely on my parents. If I wanted to buy something or do something, I wanted to make sure that I had the ability to do that.
That's awesome. So that started fairly young.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. So if you look back, what would you say your first entrepreneurial act was? What started you from on the path to now being the founder and CEO of a company? But what was step one? What's the thing you look back and go, that's me taking my first step?
I would say in around 2001, 2002, I opened my eBay account and I realized that there were these expensive French handbags in David Jones, but I knew I could get them overseas at the warehouse sale for a lot cheaper. And this was before online shopping was a big thing. So David Jones really could mark up their prices by 3 times. I mean, there was no competition, whereas now there's a lot of competition. So I would get my friend to send these bags. I'd get them from France and sell them on eBay and make a profit, which I thought was great. I would say that's my first entrepreneurial thing. But I also think seeing my friends, they would buy expensive bikinis, and I would know, and I thought it was ridiculous because it was exactly the same shape as our underwear. But why was a bikini $200, and why were Bonds underwear, $6? So I wanted to try and make things like that. Okay.
So what were you like in school then? Because you're having sort of these really it's almost like you're thinking ahead of your time as a teenager. You're sort of working out how our markets work and seeing all these opportunities. What was school like for you?
I think I was never really academic.
Okay.
I didn't go to university. Well, right. I did for 1 year. But I think for school, for me, I enjoyed it, but I didn't enjoy the academic side. I was a lot more creative. I liked arts. But my parents always said, we'll send you to a good school. We may not be able to give you every single opportunity, but we'll give you a good education and you can go and be whatever you want to be. So that was very, very clear. They never said you have to be a doctor or a lawyer.
Right.
I think as a child, I wasn't self-aware enough to see what I was doing, and I love and respect my parents. But what's really interesting is now being older and looking back, I would have tried to encourage my child to go and do something entrepreneurial or sit with somebody who owned a business. But, not parents always, they can't necessarily see that either.
Right.
But they didn't teach that at school.
Right.
We learnt Latin and history and,
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so were your parents business owners or business-minded themselves?
Not
or?
at the time,
Okay.
no. I guess they do certain things, buy a house, renovate it, sell it, those sorts of things. I did grow up playing in gardens in houses that they were renovating because they would flip it.
Right, yeah.
But I think it was really that my parents taught us all three of us that we can be independent and go do whatever we want.
Brilliant.
So it was that exploration when we were children.
Right, that's really interesting because in some ways I almost think that you've got a bit of an advantage by not being too focused on school, and you were thinking entrepreneurially when you were young, as opposed to someone like me who was actually good at school, but later got spat out into the business world when I was sort of 22 or 23 and just had no skills at all, like none. But because I was good at school, I did that because I'm good at it. So keep doing that, and go to university and get the degree you don't care about. So is it fair to say, would you look back at that and say that in some ways you did have an advantage to become an entrepreneur because you were doing all these things when you were young and you weren't interested in school?
I think I have an advantage because my mum really pushed that we could do whatever we wanted. She wasn't necessarily happy about the fact that I gave up my first corporate job. I only did first year university. The whole time she's been worrying about me, what are you going to do next? What are you doing? But at the same time, she accepted it. She never pushed us you must do this or you must finish this. So I think that's been more of the advantage.
Okay.
I wouldn't say I was terrible at school. I just wasn't very interested in it.
Right. Okay. Very, very interesting. So were you born an entrepreneur then? Because this is all happening pretty young, or is this something that developed?
Well, I definitely think, I'm trying to figure this out myself too, and I actually want to ask other CEOs, what did you sell at a young age? Because it's interesting, I was listening to another podcast just this week, and it was the chief or co-founder of Airbnb who runs product. He was talking about how he was selling something in primary school and got in trouble. So I think actually you do something when you're young. The problem is that whether it's parents, whether it's teachers or the adults who are around you, they don't see that and praise it. They shut you down because you're doing something you're not meant to do. You're not allowed to sell to other kids. You're not meant to, get money from them or whatever, which I think
evil.
it's evil, which
Yeah.
I actually think it's really clever, and you need to look at those kids and you need to sit them down and teach them, maybe you're not meant to do that, but let's do it in this situation. Let's do it with play money.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Am I born an entrepreneur? I mean, I think I always like to create value. I think it also comes down to I like to help people. I hate seeing people being ripped off.
Right.
I think that's what I've noticed. With the handbags, I hated that they were so expensive and people were being charged. I mean, I know now about margins and things like that, but at the time, I hated that. Same with the bikinis. I hated that you would buy underwear that was the same shape, but it was, 10 times the amount. Same with today. I really don't like people going to agencies and being told that they need to do this thing on their website and it's going to cost a fortune.
Okay.
That sort of breaks my heart because they're a small business. They're ignorant. It's when people are ignorant, that's when they're taken advantage of. So I see that as a common pattern.
Right. Do you have some way of advising people to avoid being ripped off or getting into those situations where you sold something that perhaps you don't need, or you don't need to that extent?
I think it's really hard because everybody learns from a failure or a lesson. I didn't know I gave my whole project to a development team overseas never had managed a project before. And then the next time I did it, I broke it down. Actually, the next time I did it, I decided to teach myself more about it. So I don't think there's necessarily like a way. If somebody asks like, how should I do this, then I can tell them about the way I've done things. But I mean, just same with distributed teams. I get people who come and ask me all the time and they're like, oh, I can't do it, I failed, like it doesn't work. And it's because they have tried it, but they're like not willing to try it again or try it a different way.
Right. Yeah. And the first one's always a doozy with that.
Yeah.
So,
So true.
Very interesting. So, all right. So you've finished school. Let's fast forward to you finished school. What do you do next?
So I just missed out on a scholarship at a university in Sydney. So I actually decided that I wanted to go live in Europe, but I didn't want to backpack. I didn't want to have I wanted a gap year, but I didn't want to be backpacking.
Okay, yeah.
So
I can relate to that.
Yeah. So I decided to nanny for a French family. They were a bilingual family, and I managed to find the most amazing family in Paris. I had my own studio apartment. It was 9 square meters, but it was amazing.
Right.
On the top of like an apartment building. And they wanted me to stay for 18 months. So I negotiated with them that I could do first year of university. So I actually did do first year in Paris. I assumed there would be a lot of English speaking people and it would just be like, an international university. Nope. I was the only English speaking person and the whole thing was in French. So I did visual communication in French for the first year.
How do you even approach that? Like, I mean, I'm imagining walking into a place where I'm the only one who speaks a language. What happened? What was the first? Tell us about your first day.
Oh, I do remember the first day because it was quite scary because Parisians aren't the nicest people. I did make a very good friend who wasn't from Paris and she was helpful. But I remember the first day sitting in class because it was a very practical class. And one of the girls next to me turned to me and said in French, "Do you have a paintbrush?" And I had no idea what she was asking for. She said it extremely fast. All I heard was, "Do you have?" And I was like, no, I don't know. And then she just like moved on. But they're not very forgiving of English speaking people and they don't know how to speak English. Well, they didn't back then, 12 years ago. So they're just not interested in trying. Like, you don't speak French? Well, too bad. But after a while, I picked it up pretty quickly.
So you had to learn French though, right? Like, I
did have basic French. I did do French at high school, but it was my worst subject.
Right.
Like, my French teacher probably hated me. Now it's like it would be my best subject.
Yeah. Okay. And is this something you look back on and you thought was character building?
Definitely, but I've never thought it was character building. Like, it is, but it was the most amazing time of my life.
Okay.
Like, living in Paris, going to clubs, riding home on bikes, getting up, nannying these kids who were like, it was challenging. There were 3 kids, twins, but I had the most amazing family and lifestyle for an 18-year-old.
Right. Did they speak English, the family?
The kids were bilingual, and yes, they did because the mother was English.
That, yeah. Well, why stop? Why not keep going to? Why not keep pursuing with uni? Why not keep on staying the course there? So I could have. The funny thing was I didn't actually want to sit behind a computer all day, which is what I do now. But the other thing was I felt like I needed to support myself, and supporting yourself at university in Paris wasn't feasible, and I didn't really want to ask my parents, and it would have been very hard to get a job when your French isn't perfect. So I decided to come home back to Australia. I only came home for about 4 or 5 months. And then I went to London and got my first corporate job. Right. Doing?
I was running all the events for the Australian Chamber of Commerce in London.
Okay. So how does that come about?
Oh, so that was actually quite a fluke. The ad was on Gumtree. I applied for a few things. I had a rule to myself. I did not want to work in a pub. Yeah. Oh, that's right. I went because I wanted to go to university in London, but I had to wait a year because I have a passport, long story short, but I couldn't go to university straight away. So I decided to get a job. And I guess I applied for the job, and because I had some experience in doing some event stuff because I'd done work experience with events. I had done some email before. I had done graphic design because of Paris. So I had all this range of weird jobs because in the 4 or 5 months that I was home, I actually worked for Appliances Online, uploading all their products, which is weird because it links to now.
Yeah.
But I think just having a range of different experiences, they hadn't really seen someone who was, I was only 20 at the time. So they could pay me very it wasn't expensive for them to hire me, but I had like a range of weird experiences that all fit into this job. So yeah, I got that.
Brilliant. I've got 2 things I want to ask about there. Firstly, that was advertised in Gumtree. Is that what you said?
Mm-hmm. This was back before Facebook was the thing. Facebook was alive, but like no businesses put anything on Facebook.
Right. But Gumtree is always, I'm speaking for myself, but I've had so many bad experiences on Gumtree. So it's good to hear someone got a good job.
Yeah. I guess they get the Australians who were in London.
Yeah.
On Gumtree.
Yeah. Yeah, fair enough. All right. So I also want to know about, you've done a few things at this time. You've gone to Paris, you've come back, you start working and doing working for Appliances Online. You then go back to London. Did you have a lot of sort of confidence this sounds pretty full on to me for an 18, 19-year-old. Did you have sort of a lot of confidence at a young age to be able to put yourself out there and back yourself to...
Not at all. I would say I didn't even like picking up the phone at home.
Right.
I hated it.
Yeah.
I didn't want to answer it. And it was kind of something my parents did push me to do. But I think it's more so I realized at the end of the day, the worst case scenario, you can just come home. You just buy a ticket and you come home. I think I was still very shy, but I wasn't. It was just about these are the things that you need to do and... I'm just going to do it.
You could just plow through it. But did you have, a lot of people will look at that and go, I couldn't even put myself forward for something like that.
Oh, do you know they didn't even advertise it as the Australian Chamber of Commerce? I didn't really know what it was. Oh. I literally just applied for, I think, 3 to 4 jobs on Gumtree. Okay. And someone called me and was like, I'd like you to come in for an interview. And I was like... oh, which job is this? You don't really know. Yeah. I just really didn't want a job in a pub. Yeah. Because I wasn't going to learn anything.
Right. Fair enough. And at that age, you had the awareness to realize that when you went to work somewhere, you wanted to learn something. Is that?
Yeah, definitely.
Really? So you've always had that, have you? Or?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. That's pretty impressive.
I'm always curious. A lot of people ask me, including my boyfriend, say to me, that I ask too many questions.
Right.
And I find it's like the fastest way to learn. So I really still now, I think because I haven't been to university, I kind of see today as my university. It's like you can learn things all the time from every person you meet or whatever you read. Right. So I think I would get bored easily at a something normal.
Yeah. I did work at a bar for about 5 years and didn't learn a whole lot, so I think you might have dodged a bullet there. What happened? So you go to London. How long are you there for?
I was there for 18 months.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I decided to come home for someone else.
Right. Okay.
And that's when I was living in the country. I basically moved to the country, which was a massive change for me because I'm a city person. Yeah. And then from there, I worked for myself. So I've been working for myself for a long time now. Okay. And so you moved back to the country, culture shock, is it a bit? A bit. I'm very adaptable. I don't mind what situation I'm in as long as I'm, I guess, occupied. Yeah. So I had the option, like I could do freelance work. I could use what I've learnt previously at the job in London. But then also a lot of the businesses around Cowra Orange were doing well, but they didn't have the talent to do stuff. So I'd come in with ideas. They didn't really know who I was, but I said I could do stuff for them. Right. So how did you approach them? So I was extremely shy and an introvert, and I got to Cowra, and after a few, so I did do the eCard website, which didn't work, but after that I actually built a website that was a marketplace, an online marketplace for people in the country to sell to people in the city, because I saw that all these people would come to Orange for the weekend or come to Cowra. They loved the produce, they loved the shop, but there was no online store. And if I built an online store just for one single shop, how were they going to drive traffic? They would have struggled. So I decided, okay, we'll build a marketplace, a bit like a Westfield online. And I decided to build this site. So I taught myself WordPress and built the first site. Didn't really have much of a login for the retailer, but that didn't matter at the beginning. I was overspending money with agencies. And so I actually had to go to the store to ask them if they wanted to be on my website. Otherwise I had no product.
Yeah.
So one store was like, you're not a local. And I had been living in Cowra at the time for like at least 2 years.
Did they really say that?
Yeah.
God, yeah.
So I was a bit like, they're like, who are you? You know, I don't know who you are. You haven't been here for long enough, sort of thing. Which was super frustrating. But then I went to a store in Orange and spoke to them, and they said, we don't really want to be on your website, but can you build us our own website? And that really changed everything, because I decided that I didn't want to build their website yet, because they didn't even have a Facebook page. And this was Instagram was around, but nobody was using it. So I said, okay, I'll run your Facebook page. And then after a year, I think we went on to Instagram. But we used to post on Facebook, and these people would come running into the shop to buy the stock. And we were making a lot of money just through posting stock, photos online or on this Facebook page.
Yep.
And then I decided to build out the site. So I did that for a few stores.
Right. So just to drill down on exactly how you'd approach them. Are you talking door knocking, like you're walking
literally.
in and how did you if you're shy, if you're an introvert, how did you kind of will yourself to do that?
Well, that's a really good question, because I could never, ever, even today, I don't think I could go in and do it. But I so badly wanted these products on this marketplace. So the only way was to go into my favorite stores and explain can I please speak to the business owner or the person in charge? I'm building this. And they'll be like, yeah, they're here. No, they're not. Come back later, or whatever it was. But if the person was in there, you would be like, I'm building this site marketplace and this is what I want to do. They kind of look at you weird. But some of them, when they realize that it's very rare for someone in a town to, build something, and they see an opportunity, then they take it.
Right. And is there any reason why you chose to walk in there and talk to them as opposed to, say, calling them?
No, that's a very good question. I think I was just, it's there's only a couple of streets in Cowra and one in Cowra and 2 in Orange.
Yeah, right.
So if you're walking down the shop, you might as well just
pop in and
yeah,
make a few sales.
Exactly.
Awesome. So and then you're posting all these all these pictures on Facebook, making this store a lot of money. So that's back in the day when Facebook was a real gravy train for, you'd post something and you'd get this massive reach. Is that around that time?
Yeah. So they had business pages.
Yeah.
But yeah, the reach was incredible.
Mm-hmm.
It's unbelievable. It's a shame that it's cut now.
Yeah. It keeps getting cut.
Yeah, so does Instagram.
Yeah.
But we got it before then, and it allowed us to build up the list for the store, which justified building a website, because so many people build e-commerce stores and then they have no idea how to get traffic to their store.
Gotcha. Okay. Interesting. So on this podcast, obviously, we talk about some of the tough times people have been through in their careers. When someone says that to you, what's some of the challenges you've had, what's one of the first experiences you'd think of? Is it your e-card site?
Yes, I would definitely say that was a huge turning point. We'd spent thousands and thousands of dollars on this development agency, or development, whatever you want to call it, overseas dev shop, and it didn't work. But it was also, so it was frustrating, but it was also a huge learning, because I had, with a friend, drawn up, everything we wanted to do, had beautiful ideas, but never actually did any research on it. So it meant that not only did I spend a lot of money, but the next one I really didn't want to spend money. There was also a learning prior to that. I actually built a travel website in between living in Paris and going to London, and I had given all my money to an agency in Surrey Hills in Sydney.
Okay.
I remember so clearly going to the bank that day, and I asked, because I thought I would be sneaky and pay the website people in cash. And the lady goes to me, "Oh, what are you doing? Are you buying a car today?" And I said, "No, I'm actually, taking this to an agency. I'm going to build a website." She goes, "Well, your money's better in the bank." So I think twice. So the massive learning thing was spending money, like large sums of money, with these web shop agencies, web development shops, and not being able to project manage.
Right.
Like I was way too young to know. Like I just thought they could do it. You build, you write the spec, you give them all the screen, like the wireframes, and they build, and then it comes out perfectly. Even if it came out perfectly, I would have spent so much time trying to get users to the site, and maybe I wouldn't have had enough users. But I think that's one of the biggest learning things. So that's why for my marketplace, I really taught myself how to build it, and it was really scrappy.
Right. Okay. And while you're getting these websites built, so were you sold, this whole complete package with the bells, with the whistles, with everything,
Definitely for the one in Surrey Hills.
Okay.
Totally. This was when Joomla was a thing.
Yeah.
And they, nobody had really, I didn't know anyone building software. This would have been in, what year was it? 2007? So, 11 years ago now. There was obviously software in the valley, in Silicon Valley, but no one was really building platforms or software. So when I went to this agency, they were used to building sites for businesses, like a window blind website. So yes, they totally would sell everything to go with it.
And did you actually get something? Did you get a product from them, or?
Not really. Kind of, but not really usable.
Okay.
And also at that age, I was quite frustrated that you kind of give up.
Right.
You're like, I just can't. It's actually a hurdle because you've spent all your money. I literally took out all my savings.
Yeah.
And you spend all your money. So what do? It's not like, you've got more savings, or I had venture capital, I don't think that existed, or, seed investors. I had no idea what that was. And my parents didn't either. My dad took me to the agency.
Right.
And sit and argue with the agency.
Right.
But, I think the thing is I just didn't have any more money, and I moved back to London, so I wasn't in Sydney to contact them, and I sort of just got frustrated. So it was a combination of not having a finished product, but also not having more money to be able to do stuff or take it somewhere else.
And what's the moment like? Do you remember the moment when you thought to yourself, I'm not getting what I want out of this? And you actually had to accept that?
I think probably when I got my job in London, I was just I'm just going to move on.
Right.
From it.
Because I can remember the first time I learned that not everyone pays. You sell something, or you provide a service, and I remember providing something, some marketing help for some people over in England, and I was in Australia obviously at the time. I did it through these sites, and that first time that I realized they're not going to pay, was an absolute epiphany to me. I'm like, everyone just pays, but not everyone does pay, and sometimes you pay and you don't get what you expected. And especially, it might have been different for you but when I was first starting to this stuff, I felt, I can still remember the feeling of how I just felt so robbed, and so my worldview changed because not everyone pays.
I think I always pay. I think I'm too honest because I feel guilty. I'm
so like that too, yeah.
Which is not good in business.
Not good to always pay.
No, getting what you expect.
Yeah.
Or the value.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay, so and then the e-card site, what was different about that to going to those dev guys versus the Surrey Hills?
So it was very similar, I guess, but I felt like we were getting a better deal because we were going overseas.
Okay.
To a developing country.
Right.
So you could get, web development done cheaper. But it was still a lot more, the project was a lot more because it was a lot bigger.
Uh-huh.
And I did pay in increments, but because what they did was I specified at the very beginning this part must be in HTML5, but they left that part to the end. So they built every single thing but that part, and that was the e-card part where the, animated... I wouldn't say GIFs, but, animated images would happen.
Okay.
And you couldn't have an e-card without those animated parts.
Right.
I guess it was, looking back, it was very like Canva. You know how you can design flyers? It was like that, but designing for e-cards. But imagine, it wasn't in HTML. You couldn't do it in the browser. Okay. Because they wanted to do it in Flash. So everybody would have to have Flash. And you would have to, when you send the card, it wouldn't render on mobile or iPad. Okay.
And, so people are going to be listening to this and go, you said that you had challenges with the project management side of it. What didn't you know that you know now, or that you do differently now?
So number one, I would definitely hire an individual. Or if you need multiple individuals, like a front end, back end, or UX person, you get them as individuals, because then they're fully focused on you and your company, not developers trying to get a project done for their boss because they're sitting in an office in another country. And then the other thing is I'll break it down into small projects, doing a landing page, getting some traction, doing a small section. And I guess, in an ideal world, you have someone technical or a technical advisor who can say this part's not quite right, or this part is taking a lot longer than it usually should.
Okay.
Or to check their code along the way, because who knows what they're building.
Yeah. Okay. And so, you said you went over to London and that's when you gave up on the travel site. When did you give up on the e-card site?
That's a good question. Probably soon after, when they couldn't again, because I made the same mistake twice, and I tell people they're not allowed to make the same mistake twice. Probably when I realized we'd spent so much money, and what were we going to do? We couldn't get more money to go and fix this thing.
Right. Okay.
So I moved on to the next thing, which was the marketplace.
And how good are you at just moving on? Just getting over it and saying, "Oh well, that didn't work out. Don't mind." Next.
I would say I'm good at moving on if I need to, but I think it's also important to be persistent. So if something doesn't work now, but now I do it in a lot smaller chunks, but if something doesn't work now, then I'm persistent to try and fix it or, make it better.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Cool. All right. So you're in Cowra. How long were you there for?
About 5, 7, 6 years.
Right. And what comes next after that?
So I had started Pixc as a landing page, and I was in Sydney, and I had met, actual detail. I did a sort of startup weekend, and I pitched Pixc and we won, and I learnt that there was this whole ecosystem of people in Sydney at co-working spaces. And I actually did that startup weekend because I went on to Meetup and was I put into Google tech entrepreneur meetup or entrepreneur events Sydney. On the Friday afternoon, I called my partner at the time and said, I think I might do this thing called a startup weekend. So the whole world opened up. And when I won that, I met someone specifically, Matthew, and Matthew was working at Fishburners in Sydney. And he was also a mentor for Telstra's accelerated program, Murudi. And he suggested that I do this. And, you could get $40,000 investment. I thought it was great. I could, not just the money. I didn't really take it seriously at the time. I just thought it would be good to network and learn. Again, learning, I don't really know what I'm doing. So I got into Murudi and I was in Sydney for 6 months. And during the program, they took us to San Francisco, and I thought it was amazing in the week that they took us. So as soon as it finished, I moved to Silicon Valley.
And what's so good about San Francisco?
I would say the people. So
Right.
it's really the network. It's the density of intelligent people who really want to make a difference. And that sounds a bit silly, but I would say really want to build stuff, and nothing is a barrier. You tell, like, someone in San Francisco, in the Valley, is mining the moon. And people,
Really?
yeah.
Okay.
It's a company. They're like looking at mining the moon, and they've raised a lot of money for it. So I think like no idea is too silly, but they do like to see things that are big, and they're really going to push you. So everybody's very encouraging. No one will really put you down for your idea.
Okay. Right. So you moved over there, and is this where you started Pixc? Like you were working on Pixc over there?
Yes, but I'd started it when I was in Sydney for the Telstra Accelerator program.
Okay.
But I did continue over there, and I was initially there by myself. Again, I had a remote team, so I went over by myself, and I decided I needed a network, because in the Valley, it's like, did you go to Stanford? Did you work at Google? Did you work at Facebook? Or did you go to Harvard? And obviously I hadn't done any of those things.
But you lived in Car, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I was a female with no technical co-founder.
Right.
And, I probably look like I'm 16 years old. So
I saw in one of your videos, actually, when I was researching this, that someone said you look too small to be a CEO. Is that?
Yeah.
Was that?
And you know what's really ironic? On the way here in my Uber, the guy goes, "Oh, what are you doing at this time in the afternoon to be going to the city?" I said, "Oh, I'm going to record a podcast." And he goes, "Oh, well, where's all your equipment?" And I was like, "No, I'm going to be interviewed." He's like, "What do you mean? Where's all your equipment? I thought you're the one doing the recording." And I was like, wow, that's a generalization.
That's terrible.
It's kind of funny.
Right. Does that frustrate you?
No.
No, you don't care.
It doesn't bother me. Like,
Right.
it would frustrate me if like it's a customer I want to do a deal,
Mm.
But if it's someone who, no, it doesn't bother me. Like, I got nothing
Right.
to lose there.
And this person, you don't have to say who they are, who said you're too small to be a CEO. Was this in...
That was an Uber driver in
Oh,
San
as
Francisco.
well. Oh,
yeah,
okay. Right.
Yeah. Because they always ask, oh, what do you do? Sort of thing.
Yeah.
Having their chat.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I started a company. Oh, you're too small to be a CEO.
Wow. Okay.
It's kind of weird.
Yeah, that sounds... I really wanted to know how that came up. So
Yeah.
that was... well, there you go. All right. All right. So your time in San Francisco, how did you... you went over there. What were you... What type of person did you become over there? What did you think differently? Did you... did you think differently? It's probably the big question by the time you came back.
I definitely think I would say bigger.
Mm-hmm.
And what's possible. I think it's also still a challenge in a way, because Australians aren't as good at selling themselves, whereas Americans are very good at it. So I would say that I learned, but I wouldn't say I thought differently. Like, I had all these thoughts about what they do differently, but it didn't necessarily change who I was.
Right. Okay, so you just thought a bit bigger, perhaps.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right, so then you come back to Australia, I presume.
Yeah. So last year, I was there for about 2.5 years.
Mm-hmm.
And last year I received a grant from Queensland, and so I've been based in Brisbane.
Yes.
I still split my time between San Francisco, Sydney, and Brisbane.
Right.
But I've been spending a lot more time in Brisbane because the state is really investing in the tech ecosystem here. So I came back specifically for that.
Right. Okay. And you sort of talk to a lot of people about how to hire people online on these outsourcing sites, if I can say that. Actually, you don't like the word, do you? Outsourcing.
I don't like the word outsourcing.
Why not?
I don't like it because I I mean, if you want to outsource something and give someone a project and it's done and you never contact them, then that's probably outsourcing. For me, it's really about hiring individuals and bringing them onto the team, into your company culture, and they stay with you for a long time. So our team, we're remote. Yes, I have used some of these sites like Upwork, Odesk at the time, Elance at the time. I looked at AngelList as well, LinkedIn, but I find remote people, so I don't call it outsourcing because they work with Pixc full time, and they're part of the vision and mission too.
Okay. I remember because I used to work so I technically worked for Elance, Odesk, Elance, Odesk, and then Upwork. So this sounds like I had 4 jobs. I didn't. It was the same job, but the company just kept changing its name. And I remember they used to, I can probably say this, want us to call it insourcing.
Oh, so interesting. Never heard that.
Yeah. So this idea that you hire people on these sites and they become part of your team, kind of like what you're describing. And the reason being is because it is quite a bit of effort to be hiring people all the time, and for you not to have, some retention there and to build some trust and whatnot. Because there is people that aren't so good on those sites as well as being quite good. So I suppose that the question is, did you always treat it like this long-term investment that you sound like is how you do it now? You want someone to come in on your team and you want them to stay. Is that how you started with it, or is that something that you came to learn?
I think it was definitely something I came to learn. I never consciously went out there and said, oh, I'm going to build this team and this person's going to be with me for a long time, because I didn't even know if I had the money to be able to support them. But it comes back to, I would have a small project, test it out. It also helps, like, not just the project and see if that actually works for your company, but also how does the person fit with you, and how do they feel that, they like you and you like them, both ways. But then I realized, like, everybody is human. They could be hired by a top company to do a project, but if you treat them like a human, not only do they stay with you longer, as it's not just that, but it's actually in their off time, they're thinking about you, they're thinking about your company and the problems you want to solve. And if you bring them on that journey of, this is actually our vision and this is why we're doing it and the purpose, then they actually get really excited. Whereas if it's just a task, they could literally get any task on one of these platforms and they could be paid a lot more. That's the other thing.
Right. So how do you, people are going to be listening and going, okay, that sounds really tough to do with remote people, is to have them buy into the vision and all that. How do you do that?
I think giving them your story is a very good start. Like, why are you doing this? Why do you need to achieve it? Like, telling a developer that you want this thing built, it's great. Like, anyone can tell them, oh, I need this thing built. They build it and then that's it. But if you tell them, oh, we have this customer or this user and this is a big problem of theirs, and can you build this part? And yes, we may not know what the next part looks like, but we're going to give this part to the user, and they're going to test it and we're going to come back to you with more information. Then they get excited because they see that their work is valued. I know for a fact, like, our engineer who's been with me for nearly 3 years, he loves seeing the users use their product. Engineers can build stuff like there's no tomorrow. They could just build forever, but it doesn't mean somebody's going to use their product.
Yeah.
So I think having that, I think also just being really clear, like, here are our values. I remember having a conversation with someone who was a very first hire at Shopify. I didn't end up hiring her, but the whole meeting was not about what she could do. It was actually more about, like, who are you as a person? What do you value? Why would you like to work at a company like this? What do you want to learn? And when you treat it like that, they will give you their best output, because it's not about get this task done. It's more like, okay, what did you learn today? And then they'll go and self-learn. Like, they'll go and read articles because they're excited to be able to use that learning that they've read about and apply it to whatever task you give them.
That's awesome. So, and like, I suppose the other question would be then, do you think it's Do you think it's harder to do it with a distributed team than it would be with a in-house team? Or What'd you say? What'd you call it? Co-located team. Yeah, I don't know. I haven't heard that term before. There you go.
Well, I've never tried.
Right.
So I don't know.
Okay.
I'm sure there's pros and cons to both, and there's definitely situations where, you don't have to pick up the phone to teach that person something. You don't have to, they'll hear it in the lunchroom, or they'll hear it, as they say, next to the water cooler. But I think it's just being conscious of us, like of our team. Like we have certain calls every week. I also have a habit, like I would say to IC, but Amal, who I hired and knows everything about the company, like I just have a habit of flicking her articles on WhatsApp and she really appreciates that. But I'm sure like it may be easier in person. But the thing is, there's so many pros to having a distributed team. Yeah. They're like, I don't know if that one outweighs the pros.
Right. And some of those pros are?
Being able to scale up and scale down.
Right. Yeah.
I think employees are a lot happier. Like at the end of the day, they don't have to sit in traffic. They don't have to commute to a box with no windows. They can be wherever they want. And I don't mind. I don't need to know, as long as they get the task done. So there's a lot of overheads with having office space when you're starting out. I think it's also interesting because you can hire talent straight away. Like you're not confined to an area. If I was confined to Cowra, I would have never grown. Like I think there was one guy who tried to hack the NBN and he got sent to jail in Cowra. And that's how I found out about him. But if I found out about him before, I could have hired him and used him as a developer. The talent isn't there. So I think having a large pool of talent, but also a diversified team. And also, we're able to run 24/7. I can literally do a piece of work, finish in the evening, and somebody in Europe can pick it up.
Mm-hmm. And what do you mean by diversified team?
Diverse team. So I guess like as in, you have people from different markets, different countries. Like, so I have a head of content and partnerships in Ireland. She can go to all the events in London, in Paris, like all the e-commerce events. She's made amazing community, and it actually looks like we're bigger than we are because we have people everywhere.
Right.
So we can cover the globe with different e-commerce events, meetups. If there's Shopify meetup, BigCommerce meetup, we can go to all of them.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So if someone wanted to start doing this, if they wanted to start building their remote team or their distributed team, where would you suggest they start?
So I always tell people to list everything that you currently do on a regular basis, and then, because there's always something you can give someone else. People say, oh, no, I can't. But really, if you had someone if you had the budget and someone was going to come and do that task in the office, you can probably, and it's on a computer, you can probably give it to somebody else, like a virtual assistant. And then I will break that task down. So it won't be, do my social media management. It will be do 7 posts, 1 for each day of the week. You're going to send me the 7 posts on Monday. I'm going to check them, confirm them, and then you'll post them. And you do that with one person for a month. So they've done 4 weeks. Then if you are happy with it, then you may not have to check every post, but maybe you do. Then they can bring up other ideas, or they could go onto Twitter, or they could go onto commenting on forums. So you can expand it from there, but I really break it down into a very small task.
Right.
That's repeatable and very goal orientated. None of this strategizing about, you can get very, very talented people on the team, who've worked at these huge companies that have this experience. But as a startup, you don't have the budget to, write this huge strategy and maybe it will work.
Yeah.
So I always suggest to do the tasks, give these tasks to somebody else that you've already done and that works in your company.
Right. What I think is really interesting about that is then you also have to have the confidence. So if you are going to start delegating stuff, that you are going to build revenue, right, yourself.
Yeah, I guess. Of course, definitely. You definitely need revenue. I think B2B, like business to business sales is a lot different. I don't know enough about B2C. But you can get those initial sales at the beginning. But the other thing is you can hire a virtual assistant for a very affordable rate.
Mm-hmm.
We have somebody who helps us with social media. Young guy, lives in Guyana. Never knew where Guyana was before.
Where is it?
It's next to Venezuela.
Okay.
You know, and he's probably earning more than he said. Like, he's one of the only freelancers in the city. There's only about 5 of them. And he's earning decently, but for us, it's very affordable. And he does, 20 hours a week of doing some odd social media tasks.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't have to be expensive. You can start with $50 a week and get those 2 odd tasks done.
Yeah.
So it's just about finding somebody in a country who's, where the pay scale is different.
Yeah, and leverage those different, the different currencies, I suppose.
Yes.
But what's interesting about you talked about the small, start off small, was when I was doing this and teaching business owners how to do this as well, I used to tell them that when you're posting stuff on these sites and you're trying to get them for the first time, is I would always put in like a really specific instruction in the actual post itself. So, send this to me at 11 p.m. tomorrow night, or just something in there that just proves that they've got the attention to detail.
I do that.
You do that?
Yeah, but I write start your cover letter with a smiley face, and I write the word out smiley. Yeah. And then it's really interesting. Do they write the word smiley or do they send emoji? But the best thing about that is it's start your cover letter. So you can basically see if they did not put it in the first line, you just delete their application.
Right. Awesome.
Yeah.
That's better than mine, actually.
No, I quite like that because then they've got to read it and action it at the time.
Yeah.
I guess my next point is if they get an interview, then I'm like, it's at this time and you've got 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Like it's 10. I mean, I'm like, the interview's at this time and it's going to be a 10-minute call. And if they don't show up on the dot, fine, I'll still wait for the 10 minutes, but you can tell if they're on time or late. Even things like, we're going to use the Google Hangout link. I'll send you a calendar invite. Or I'll tell them, you need to send me a calendar invite to this email address. Yeah. And do they know how to send one? Okay, if they don't, do they go and figure it out?
Yeah, yeah. Interesting. I even had I used this on Seek recently. I was hiring like a marketing sort of assistant for one of my clients. And I had in there, once you send back your cover letter, DM us on Instagram. And this is the client.
I like that.
DM us on Instagram and we'll set up the interview from there, because they're a marketing person. They should be using Instagram and they should know how to. The amount of people who didn't send the DM on Instagram was astounding. This is there's probably 130 from memory, and this is pretty recent, in the last 6 months or so, 130 people who applied for the job, and it would be 40 or less who sent the DM. So that saves you so much time as well.
You just call those people.
Yeah.
Straight away. I completely agree. If they can't read instructions, like they might be the really good person, but they don't have the attention to detail. Yeah. Then it's not going to work, especially if it's that type of job. Yeah. And it's, these requests we're putting out are pretty, they're not they're not too strenuous. They're, it's pretty simple. But yeah, okay, so cool. That sounds like that all sounds really interesting. We'll wrap it up soon, but I do have to ask, and I do ask this every podcast episode, what your relationship is like, should I say, with self-doubt. I would say strong.
Strong. Yeah,
like I think the thing is you do doubt yourself. I doubt myself a lot, because you just. I don't know if it's human nature. I guess maybe also as a female, also looking young, you have other people who doubt you, so then you doubt yourself. But at the same time, as I said previously, like sometimes there's times when I just don't care. Right. Like I don't care, and that's actually the best time. Mm-hmm. Like I perform my best when I'm giving a pitch or a speech when I don't really care about the outcome. Mm-hmm. I know that sounds a bit weird, but
no, not at all.
I don't really it doesn't faze me who I'm talking to, whereas when it's super important, then I doubt myself, then it's not as good.
Okay. Well, that's the that you want that the other way around, right?
Yeah, definitely. But I don't know. I guess as I learn and you see yourself what you can do and what you can achieve, then I overcome it. I think also talking to other people and then people responding to you. So just say if I give a talk and if nobody said anything after, then you're always going to doubt yourself for your next talk. But if you give a talk, you were doubting yourself, and then someone goes, "Oh, that was great. I learned this, this, and this," then you're like, "Oh, okay, it wasn't that bad." And then you learn for the next time that it wasn't that bad, so it's fine.
Yeah, go a little bit easier on yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. And I do want to ask as well, because you have spent some time in Silicon Valley and you spend a lot of time in Brisbane. You're quite involved in the startup scene, from what I can tell. Is there any sort of common advice within the space that you think that you disagree with? Because, we have, as entrepreneurs or whatever, we try to do things differently. We think we're doing everything right. But then it's almost like at times then we get quite dogmatic about our own, within the space. We get pretty, we all conform to the same type of thinking. Is there things that you hear frequently or commonly that you think, nah?
Well, I think when I was starting out, being told I need a technical co-founder is very, very common.
Yeah.
And it's quite frustrating because, if I was an investor, I'd totally invest in a team that has a technical co-founder. Like if you're starting a company, go find a technical co-founder. But it's not something that you have to do in order to start or build a company. Like most companies, putting aside tech companies, hire the right people to do the job. They don't find a co-founder for every, like the main roles that they need. So I think that's the first thing. I think the other thing is huge. Like I get a lot about, remote team people all the time would say, "Oh, you're outsourcing," or "How's your outsourcing going?" And I think even still today, like they see, I am involved in the ecosystem, especially the Australian ecosystem, whereas like the Silicon Valley ecosystem is quite big, so you're not as like known. But I have been in the ecosystem for a while and be like, "How's your outsourcing going?" And you don't really look like you're growing because no one sees your team, no one sees your office. So that would be a challenge. But again, like they're the things that I don't really care about, because at the end of the day, it's like, are we internally growing? Is it working for us? I guess it just becomes more of a barrier when you want to go fundraise. We're about to change our website and we're going to be a lot more open with our customers about like, this is our vision and mission and values and why we're doing this and why we're distributed. Because you get a lot of the time, where are you based? Where's your head office? But I think people are more and more accepting of that there are distributed teams nowadays.
And what do you say to that when people do ask, where's your head office?
Well, we have offices, co-working spaces in multiple places, but I guess it's where you're just registered.
Yeah, cool.
But I mean, it's very tricky question depending on who it is.
Yeah, right. Okay, cool. So if people want to find out more about you, find out more about Pixc, where should they go? I'm
literally on every channel.
Right.
So I'm on Twitter. I'm quite active on Twitter if it's around technology stuff, or articles that I'm sharing. I'm Holly CCC. Otherwise on LinkedIn, Holly Cardew. Instagram, Facebook. I don't really use Facebook for work stuff or Instagram. But yeah, LinkedIn or Twitter are pretty good.
Right. And Pixc?
Yeah, Pixc is Pixc Photos on Twitter, and we're on all the social media platforms as well. Or Pixc, Pixc.com.
Brilliant. All right, Holly, thanks so much for coming in and speaking to us today. That was a really awesome chat. We appreciate it. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Be The Push podcast. Show notes can be found at bethepush.com/podcast and clicking on the relevant episode link. I appreciate your company and look forward to talking to you again soon.